right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we're actually returning to the last episode we did on Destroy All Neighbors with guest Jonathan Martin. And we're actually going to be talking to the film's writer, Charles Pieper. Jonathan's along for the ride as well, and we get to talk to Charles about some of the actual influences that inspired Destroy All Neighbors and get his thoughts on some of the puzzle pieces that we brought up on the previous episode. We also get into some other stories from behind the scenes of making this movie, and it's a great, fun conversation. So that's coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening right now. Hit that follow button or subscribe or whatever it is. And you could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. So, of course, make sure you've already seen Destroy All Neighbors. Go watch it on Shudder right now if you haven't yet. And then let's get into this conversation with Charles Pieper and Jonathan Martin about the film. All right, so we just covered Destroy All Neighbors with guest Jonathan Martin. Jonathan's back with us, and we're joined by writer of Destroy All Neighbors, Charles Pieper. Charles, thank you so much for being here.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to talk about my life and the one-to-one ratio of what really happened and what's on the screen, because none of it was exaggerated. I killed everybody. It's been a delight.
I'm sure.
It's all real.
Yeah.
You know, it's like old Han Solo. It's real.
Yeah,
all of
it's
it.
all real.
Whatever the quote was.
Yeah. So we just had a great time talking about this movie, and, you know, I'll have a few questions for you along the way, but then we'll get into what we do here on the show, the puzzle pieces, talking about what movies we think might have inspired this movie to a degree. And of course, you know, you as the writer, there's also Josh Forbes, the director. So, you know, both of you have different points of view coming into the project.
There's a lot of us. We're all very simpatico. And for the
That's
record,
good.
I was the first writer, and there were two other writers who came on board who evolved it. And it's like a mind meld. There was also Mike Benner, who's most known for Bob's Burgers.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jared Logan, who's a wonderful stand-up comedian, late-night writer. They brought more humor and sweetened up my darker, more morbid script. And the end is just a wonderful melange of the three of us. Yeah, plus Josh, who put a lot of himself into it. And Alex and Jonah were producers as well and brought a lot to it. It was... making this film felt like getting a band together over the course of a decade, and that's also what the film's about. So it was a very interesting experience.
Yeah, I have to imagine there's a lot of playing around with a story like this, where once you actually get to set, I mean, not so much improv, but just like things kind of evolving as the actual players are cast and the music starts coming into the picture.
Oh, man, that music. Let me say. I've been a fan of the band Man Man since 2005, when Josh Forbes and I made the initial sizzle trailer out of like old horror movie footage to try to get this film made a decade ago. We used Man Man music in it. Jump forward a decade, not only did the lead singer, songwriter, and guitarist of Man Man score the entire film, but the lead singer Man Man is in the film. He plays Caleb Bang Jensen, the musician.
Nice.
I was listening to their soundtrack to my movie right before you came on, and let me tell you, if My Real Neighbor had been blaring that music a decade ago, this film never would have gotten written, because I would have loved hearing it.
Yeah, right. That's funny.
It's crazy. This film is crazy to me. I love it. I was listening to Man Man in high school. Like, Jesus Christ.
That is wild, because Jonathan and I were talking a lot about the music during the main conversation, and how, you know, landing on specifically this kind of prog rock and kind of bringing in all these influences. Hearing that, I mean, Jonathan, the fact that this is music that Charles was kind of like aiming for all these years, it's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, and it kind of we kind of touched on that yesterday, because what did I say near the end of the conversation? I said there's a lot of knowing Charlie. There's a lot of Charlie in this film, and so hearing that there's no I love the story. I love like this, just how that all had to. It almost is like kismet, right? But it's like it just, but like knowing now that you are actually listening to this and now it's come into being. It's like you started birthing this into existence when you just started
I know,
listening
dude, it's like I've been trying to take the world's biggest shit for a decade and I finally got it into the bowl. Like, the relief is extraordinary. Oh my God. I mean, and also another little detail, just coincidental. So my favorite film of all time is The Night of the Hunter.
Mm.
Okay, with
Oh,
Robert
snap.
Mitchum, with the one and only Charles Lawton, made a film so wild and dark that even though he was a famous character actor, he was banished from ever directing a film again. Turns out that's also Alex Winter's favorite film of all time.
Nice.
Also, Jonah Ray loves that film too. So they decided to put in a little bit of Vlad singing the song Robert Mitchum sings, the Leaning on the Everlasting Arms, to threaten him as he's walking away. And then that goes into the nightmare montage where Alex's voice as Vlad is singing it throughout. And on the soundtrack, there's an extended mix of that track with Alex singing more of the Night of the Hunter song. And it's just like, I have a Night of the Hunter poster around the corner in my apartment here. Like this whole thing. And the soundtrack, Ryan and Brett came up with 100 individual sound cues for the film. And when they released the soundtrack, which is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, through Sub Pop Records, they whittled it down to 69 tracks, just to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Because why wouldn't you, right?
yeah, I
And
know.
it's interesting you bring up Night of the Hunter because just the other day I saw somebody posting, a filmmaker was posting on Facebook like, "Hey, Southern Gothic recommends go," and my only one was just like
No.
Night of the
Yeah.
Hunter.
One and
That's-
done, man. Like you can't
It's
top
like,
that. It's
What else do you need? You know what I
I-
mean?
this is how deep my Night of the Hunter love goes. About 8-9 years ago, I worked for free for a month on a film out here in LA because the film director was an older man named Terry. I'm blanking on Terry. He was an Academy Award-winning documentarian. But I took the job because when he was a college kid right out of UCLA in the late 50s, his first job was as the second unit director of The Night of the Hunter.
Hell yeah.
And I wanted to be close to him to hear stories about Robert Mitchum and Charles Lawton. And he was so busy directing, and plus there was no money. His film, it was a period piece 60s film. I think it was called Liza, Skies Are Gray. The lead actress went on to be one of the Manson girls in the Tarantino film. She gets like burnt to death.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, he just found it amusing. I think he was in his late 70s maybe at the time, and he was just like, this young guy likes that movie? Okay, whatever. Like, I didn't get any good stories out of it, but that's my love for that film.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is like a total tangent, but like, you coming from all these short films that you've been doing and going through the whole festival circuit to now having this movie that, everybody's talking about, I feel like everybody who actually makes moves in this business is like doing things because they love movies so much. And like hearing you talk about wanting to work with that guy just because he worked on that movie.
It's the only way. If you don't actually love this shit and you're in it just for the accolades or the awards, well, number one, you're a fucking chump and get out of the room. But number two, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay? When it takes a decade to get a film made like this, that's a decade where mostly you just feel like a crumb bum. That's a decade where you walk to the coffee shop looking like this, like a goblin, and there's Christopher Nolan with his family because he lives in your neighborhood, my neighborhood, and you're just like, God damn, and then you're seeing your friends win Oscars and be like these kings and queens of the industry, and they fucking rock it, and that's great, but no, you have to really love this stuff, and I can't even speak to that more than me. Like, I've been this singularly weird horror comedy guy since day one, thanks to the love of my parents, who are theater people, who have been so supportive. I made my earliest horror movie comedies on VHS camera with them in my living room as a kid. It's called Murders at the Halloween Hotel, and the sequel is Revenge of the Halloween Hotel, which you can find on Vimeo. Like, for better or worse, I've been this guy forever, and most of my life that did not correlate to what was popular, and I just didn't deviate from it. And I've been able to kind of have this hard scrabble existence of, I've taken day jobs when I've needed to. I'm very lucky. I've lived in this apartment building for over a decade, and it's old enough to be rent controlled, which is a big help.
Nice.
But no, like, if you want to get ahead in this industry, you have to be comfortable feeling like a piece of shit for a long time. It's a war of attrition,
Sure.
I wish I had easier news, but yeah, if anyone's listening to this, like, and also like with the film festivals, if you're in it to like win awards, like cool, but also shut up, dumb chump. You go to film festivals to make contacts, to meet friends like Jonathan Martin, like you guys. Like I was such a nervous little scamp at FilmQuest 2018 because that short film, that Malakastraka took half a decade to get made as well because I wouldn't do it till I had enough finances for everyone, and I had crazy medical problems that kept happening. So you got to put in the time if you want to like do the crime. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, it's all about time, and it's funny because a lot of people. I've been following the reviews for this, which is lovely. I have a thick skin. If there's a bad review, but it's well written and makes me laugh, I fucking love it. This is a very specific film. Literally, you're gonna love it or hate it. There's no in between. But it's interesting. A lot of the reviews are like, well, piggybacking off the success of Psycho Gorman, and it's, dude, I love Psycho Gorman, but I started writing this a decade ago because I was
Yeah.
dealing with a nightmare neighbor driving me insane, and the director also had a nightmare neighbor. We lived in the same neighborhood, a neighborhood of nightmares. So just because a film comes out, people, I don't know, everything takes longer to make than one would think.
No, absolutely. And it's funny, Psycho Gorman was one of our puzzle pieces, but hearing that this has been
hell
in,
yeah.
in the works for 10 years, it's crazy how things like that
Mhm.
happen. But that's a thing though, like when you see some of those reviews and people are like, on writing on the back of Psycho Gorman, that's one thing I always want this podcast to not be, is saying that, oh, this is
Yeah.
just doing that over again or whatever. This is riding on the back of these ideas. They come about for years and years. There's all kinds of fun ways to mix up similar themes. And
Yeah.
I think, it's a good jumping off point to get into some of the other puzzle pieces that we discussed during our main conversation. I'm going to
Alright.
throw some of these out at you, get some reactions, and then I'll ask you also if you have any, main inspirations that we didn't come up with. But
Okay,
let's
sure.
start getting to that list. I kicked it off with Return of the Living Dead, as far as the mixture of rock and roll and
Yeah.
punk rock and
Mhm.
horror, gore, all
Oh
that
yeah, I mean,
craziness.
dude, I remember, I've been watching horror films on VHS ever since I was a kid because again, my parents let me watch stuff. When I was super young, they'd fast forward the adult bits, but the gore and the violence was fine. How
Yeah,
American of them.
sure.
So yeah, I remember that one scene in particular getting fast forwarded a lot in
Mm.
that film, and I was like, hold on, wait a minute. But yeah, the look of the skeleton corpse, that
Yeah.
it hurts to be dead, and that it's hysterical because it's a corpse and it's a puppet, but it's real. And with Eleanor, who colloquially becomes Skelenor, as we call her, we wanted to emulate that. And also, that scene in particular, the concept is, for me, it's so goofy because it's a puppet that's intentionally janky with eyes that don't really look right at people. But then Jonah is giving it a deep performance of sadness and pathos. And then Randy Heller is so cool. Her voice performance is amazing, and her in-person performance as the landlord is great. Like,
Yeah.
I never thought I'd end up having like the Karate Kid's mom in a movie of mine.
Yeah. Absolutely. That intentional jankiness, I just want to go back to that because that's something you can only get with practical effects
Mhm.
like this. And that's what's so beautiful about
Yep.
it.
I agree completely. And to speak on that, another roundabout, the special effects were designed by Gabe Bartalos. I grew up watching his effects in Basket Case 2 and 3 and Brain Damage and Matthew Barney's Cremaster Cycle. Over a decade ago, when I was dealing with the actual bad neighbor, I was an assistant painter and animator at his shop. I became friendly with him. We hit it off not just with film, but also art. He does a lot of art restoration of this amazing Polish artist Zukalski, who's one of my favorites. When he
Oh,
realized
yeah.
I knew Zukalski, he's like, "Oh, Charlie, oh, you know Zukalski? Oh, fuck yeah, dude. Oh, He went on to do Malika Straka with me, and now he's on board with this. And then we also were able to get the Academy Award-winning artist Bill Corso to do the painting and the
Oh, yeah,
application.
Bill.
Amazing.
Mhm.
I love Bill.
Bill is incredible, and Bill's been working with Alex Winter since they were like 20 years old on The Lost Boys.
Yeah.
He was the main applier on Freaked, and I think he did Bill and Ted 3. Like, he left Indiana Jones, the new film, and 2 days later was doing Destroy All Neighbors for us.
I
Are
had
you
no
kidding
idea.
me?
We're
Yeah.
gonna have to knock that out. No, I just to give you
Mhm.
guys another idea how cool Bill is. I produced a short for my makeup buddy Joel Harlow,
Oh
and
yeah, Harlow's great too.
yeah, Harlow's awesome. And there's Bill, but I didn't know Bill was Bill at the time.
Yeah.
And he starts telling these
Oh
stories about
man.
Harrison Ford. And I was like, "Wait, are you talking about Harrison Ford right now?" And then he's all like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Wait, who are you?" And then you look this
Yeah.
up, and he's just there, like, being on his buddy's set, just, like, doing some applications for him,
hmm
while at the same time, he's about to go take off to go do Deadpool 3.
Hmm.
You know
Yeah. No,
what I
he's
mean?
a real
Like, that's
sweetheart, and I mean,
yeah.
we had I think one of the greatest sculptors and like uniquely personal monster creators with Gabe, and then with Bill, we had one of the most technically brilliant
Mhm.
painters and application artists. Amazing, a
Yeah,
dream come true.
That's awesome. You
yeah.
know, you mentioned Freaked earlier. That was one that I thought about including when we did our whole puzzle pieces thing, but I didn't include it. But I've seen so many people making comparisons to like Alex
Mhm.
Winter being back in Freaked mode
Yeah.
after all these years. That must be awesome to see those comparisons.
Well, it thrills my soul. I'll
Hmm.
be as public on the record about this as I can be. Freaked, more than any other film, is what made me me as a kid.
Hell
I
yeah.
remember coming across it maybe 10, 15 minutes into it on HBO in like, I want to say like 93, 94, and just going like, "Hurrah!" And then the desperate tracking down that VHS. My parents and I went to every mom and pop video store in the tri-state area to find it because it was kind of a rare tape.
Sure.
We finally found one store. I want to say it was in maybe Bergenfield or Oradell, New Jersey, that had it, and we rented the hell out of it. That film inspired kind of my whole obsessive moving forward to the fact that I started writing something that ended up not only appealing to Alex Winter to produce it, but to play the main comical antagonist in prosthetics like he did in Freaked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a full circle moment of joy for my life.
Amazing. Amazing stuff. Another movie that this one Jonathan had brought up was Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh, fucking hell, that's my favorite De Palma. That film rips so hard. I want the 4K release so strong. I love that film. I love that film. Well, I'll tell you something. The film literally just came out Friday, and there's a lot percolating. But I've had several people say you should literally just turn this into a stage musical. I'm like, holy shit, with puppets and music, and my parents are theater people, musical theater people in particular. My dad's specialty is musical spoofs of songs. He did a version of a musical that was all this music from Oklahoma, but all the dialogue was altered about how much it sucks to be old. It was called Aging the Musical. So yeah, I love Phantom of the Paradise. Swan is one of the best versions of the devil ever in film. And if the director and the writers and I were already brainstorming ideas for sequels or continuations if we get to. I think what might come next would be Destroy All Neighborhoods, and let's say
Oh yeah.
Jonah becomes the world's most popular prog rock manslaughterer in prison, right? So he has a cult of followers who break him out and maybe force him to perform on the road, and madcap hilarity ensues. So
I'll
yeah,
watch it. I will watch that movie.
That
hell yeah,
sounds
me
like a lot of
too.
Hell
fun.
yeah.
That sounds like
Yeah.
a budget increase,
A
is
little
what it
bit.
sounds like.
Dear Mr. Shudder, we
Yeah.
humbly request $1 million more, please. Yes, we'll
Please.
see. Oh, fucking A. No, I'm joking, but Shudder has been nothing but a blast. They promoted the hell out of it. They let us do whatever we want. There was no interference. They got it. Literally, like a day after Alex Winter signed on, they were like, done deal, baby, let's do this. And to their credit, we did politely ask for a little bit more budget for amount of, we just had so many practical effects, and Shudder did give us a little more to make it a little easier. With that being said, it was still just a 20-day shoot.
Mhm.
It was a tight shoot. It was insane. We shot it last August into September during a 2-week long heat wave where it was over 100 degrees in LA every day, let alone when we're inside a warehouse downtown with sets and lights and Alex Winter and 40 pounds of
Whew.
rubber. It was
Yeah.
brutal. It was brutal.
Man.
Now, do you mean now, because I love this type of stuff, are you talking, because I seem to recall this being a little while ago, like, are you talking August 2022 or 2023?
I believe it was 2022. My brain is mush. No, this is, what year is this? This is 2020. No, was it?
This is
Yeah, it was
2024?
2022. Let's say 2022. That sounds right. I'll double check my calendar and get
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Well, come on in. No,
Mm.
and I got a question because I know this is about some of like the puzzle pieces and threads, but quick question, because you did mention, because I know you, Charlie, as also a director, because
Hmm.
you did do the short film
Hmm.
Malakastraka that actually won makeup effects at
That's
FilmQuest,
right,
if
it
I'm not
did. That was so
mistaken.
awesome. For Gabe
Yes,
Bertalos. He has
yeah,
that
poor
award.
Gabe.
He
Nice.
has that award on the wall in his office.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I love hearing that. And so that makes me happy. And because
Mm.
actually one of our winners of like a Cthulhu, I think back in 2018 was Pedro Pascal, and I still don't know if he ever
Dude,
got that award. So
I
I'm
hope so.
like, I
I,
would hope
I'm
so
s-
too.
I'm still itching for one of those awards. I'm gonna get a fucking Cthulhu one day. You swear. I'm saying that now.
Well,
That energy.
Hell
you're
It's
yeah.
on the
like the
right
best.
track,
But
Charlie. You're on the right
thank you,
track.
thank you. I mean, me
But
and Pedro, we're like this. We just we
yeah, yeah, yeah,
we
yeah,
run
yeah,
around
yeah.
looking for little. Well, his thing is like he likes the cute little critters. I like the scary ones. So
Hmm.
it works
Yeah.
out pretty well. Our
Mhm,
separation of
mhm.
interests.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll get that going. But you are an accomplished director. And
Thank
so a
you.
question that I have was because, I was hearing you talk and you've been trying to get this going for 10 years. So has this been like a 10-year collaboration with you and the director,
Yes.
or is that
This
why you didn't step up to the plate maybe to direct? What's the scoop there?
so this evolved out of my friendship with Josh Forbes, who's one of my close buddies out here. He's an accomplished music video director. You can look him up. His whole thing was he got so good at doing mid-level cutesy pop videos. That's all he got. But at his heart, he's a horror creeper, weirdo, gorehound, silly boy, right?
Hmm.
Like me. So we just commiserated over that. I had an insane neighbor. This isn't a video, but the wall, I'm like he was right behind the wall here, right? And yes, my apartment is the same color green as the apartment from the film. That was a coincidence from the art team. They didn't even know that. That's crazy. But yeah, I was complaining about my bad neighbor. Josh also had a bad neighbor, and his wife was just about to give birth to their first kid. So he was in like hyper protective mode. And we decided instead of killing our neighbors in reality, let's write it. And also, it was a fun creative collaboration. And Josh was pretty blatant and open about this. He's like, Charlie, you've done more writing, I've done more directing. If we team up, maybe it'll be easier to make than if we just did it alone. And he was right. It still took a decade. But if I had had that young man ego, like, no, I'm a director, if I had just tried to get this out just with me, I wouldn't have met Jonah. This wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So this was kind of a long-term canny way to get me into the world to do more directing of my own stuff. But yeah, this was a collaboration from day one, and that's what made it easier when other punch-up writers came involved. Because I was like, once we got Jonah, he wanted to make the main character more like him. So he's like, what if we get a punch-up writer, and what if we push it more towards music? What if he's a struggling musician? Because in my early drafts, he was a wannabe comic illustrator,
Hmm.
because that was kind of where I was coming from. And but I love prog rock. I love, art pop and post punk and all this weird stuff. So the collaboration was the best part, and that's how it grew into the sweet film it is now. If you read my last single draft before the others came on, it's the same story, but it's slower, it's darker, it's bleaker, it's stinkier. Because I was in my mid-20s, I was young, I was angry. I'd gone through almost 3 years dealing with that neighbor before he was evicted, let alone the end of my relationship with my then girlfriend who lived with me, and the whole thing was falling apart inside and around me. So I don't want whatever comes next to take 10 years, nor will it. Of course it won't. But this decade of evolution was the best thing that could have happened for the film and for all of us.
Awesome. I gotta ask, on the show, I ended up talking about Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, as a
Oh,
possible puzzle
dude.
piece.
So you mean the new series
Yes,
that
which
just
is obviously
I
after
mean,
you
no, this was
started,
all
but
I will say this. I watched that. I loved it. Jennifer Lynch did some of the
yeah.
direction of those episodes, and she's great. I loved that they incorporated the sounds of whale song throughout
Mm.
it as this eerie disconnect, and then at the very end, you realize Dahmer listened to whale song in prison to keep himself
Oh
calm. Like
wow.
that is a recorded
Yeah.
fact. And I thought the acting was incredible. I know there was some controversy in terms of making it at all, but from a point of view of someone who's interested deeply in the extremes of the human existence and acting and directing, yeah, I love that show. It wasn't a direct influence, but yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up because I don't think it gets enough accolades in terms of the the making of it.
Right on. Well, another one I think is a fairly obvious one is Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, especially once all those guys start getting gathered into the house and he has to make sure nobody finds out about him. Fun stuff.
Party's over.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that film. Josh Forbes maybe loves it more. And it's a similar thing where you have this kind of milquetoast, pathetic dude who, through insanity or supernatural shenanigans, whatever you want to interpret, is forced to kind of man up, for better or worse, and then just gets covered in blood. That was a direct homage or lift, depending on how much you like our film.
Yeah. So another one that Jonathan brought up, and he was talking about like the aesthetics of the film and stuff like that. He was talking about Hobo with a Shotgun. What are your thoughts
I
on
like that a lot. That cinematography, that kind of gritty, like it's 80s vibes, but it's clearly modern day
Right.
Los Angeles. But the color palette, yeah, Josh Forbes loves that film a lot. I like it a lot. Rutger Hauer is great. I wouldn't say that was like a direct lift initially, but when we got, I bet you anything, Josh showed that to William Stone, our talented DP, who just knocked this out of the park. You know, a lot of times comedies end up looking a little, well, let me put it as comedies don't often have cinematography as their main focus, but we knew this had to look like a genre film,
Sure.
even though it's funny. And I think I've seen it on the big screen at the Alamo Drafthouse a couple times, and it just looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous looking. I think so, at least.
I can't wait to see it in the
Yeah.
theater one of these days. But last one from our list, we did talk about another like 4 or 5 things, but last one I wanted to bring up, of course, Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny is where we head in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, of course, let me put it this way. A lot of the more negative reviews are like, this is like a Pick of Destiny if it fucking sucked. And I'm like, okay, dude, all right. Well, you get back to me when you make your music prog rock monster adventure.
Uh-huh.
But that kind of evolved naturally as it became more musical. Again, my initial draft wasn't music-based.
Right.
It had a much darker, bleaker ending, which I could tell you about off the record, because I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm happy with the new ending that allows for sequels. But yeah, it's, Vlad. And another thing, people are like, this film makes no sense. These fucking writers, like, Vlad's his friend, and then suddenly he's not? That's dumb. And I'm like, motherfucker, have a little bit of read the room media knowledge. Vlad is a representation of his inner demons and his brain working overtime. He gets into a groove, he's finally recording his thing, but as creatives, there's that moment right before we fucking finally finish something where we're like, what the fuck are we? No way. Oh, we fucked this up. So Vlad turning into the ultimate fuck you monster at the end. Yeah, that's a documentary. That's how it works. And you only defeat it if, like William, you just say, no, I'm not going to ignore it. I'm ignoring you. Like, to me, that plays. But yeah, I think there's a 50-50 split letterbox wise where people who are creatives, whatever they are like, I get it. And then you have people like, this fucking piece of, this dweeb, fuck you, Vlad rocks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as a musician myself, I definitely get it. And by the way, we could go on an entire hour-long tangent about media literacy right now and how people...
Oh, God. The world needs it, but my throat kind of hurts, so we'll do that another day.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you now, are there any major influences that were just right front and center that I haven't brought up at this point that you want to...
Delicatessen and
Okay.
Barton Fink.
Yes.
From day one, Josh was like, I wanted to have the fisheye lens, crazy delicatessen, Genet vibes, and also the obsessive nervousness of Barton Fink. The hallway set was designed to look like Barton Fink's apartment, but more run down in LA. I would say those are the two big ones that Josh, like from day one. What I can do is I can email you guys the sizzle reel trailer, and you'll see all the old footage we culled from. And you can see how well we maybe ended up doing it.
Oh, that's cool.
But,
that's cool. And yeah,
Barton Fink, that's maybe my favorite Coen Brothers film.
It's so
also
good.
Inside Llewyn Davis was a big draw for Josh, because that is also about the main character sucks, and he's would be a musician, but he just fucks up his life because he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
It's funny. I didn't bring them up, but I had a combo puzzle piece, Barton Fink and Inside Llewyn Davis, on my list that I was thinking about bringing up.
You are right there with Josh Forbes, my friend.
There we go. There we go.
Now that you're bringing that up, I haven't seen this film. It's always been on my list. Is like Bavarian Sound Studio, and now when you bring up
I like
Inside
that film a
Llewyn
lot. Yeah, that director is crazy cool. I like his films a lot, and yeah, that's about a horror movie sound designer losing his mind doing sound design for a horror film.
Yeah.
I actually should rewatch it. It's been that came out what, like half a decade ago, maybe
Like
more. I
10
have no
years
sense
ago.
of time now, but yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
And that main actor, I love that guy. He's one of the best little British dudes of all time.
I've never seen it. I've always heard that it's great and super weird, and yeah,
Yeah.
I got to
Mhm.
check that out for sure.
It's
Yeah.
on the to-do.
Yeah,
There's so much on
Mhm.
the to-do, right? There
absolutely.
comes a point where you have to
It never
accept
ends, especially
that
when
you
you do a
can't
movie
see
podcast. It
and
never ends.
consume.
But
Um,
yeah,
I can imagine.
can I ask Charlie a question
sure,
here now?
go for
Like,
it.
and this is just a little bit looking forward, and maybe because, I have my cliff notes and my cheat sheet that I have
Mhm.
some things going on. We mentioned Mala Kastraka and the short film and stuff like that. And I guess my question for you is, what's next, man? And is there a possibility we can see something in the Lobsterverse?
I think the Lobsterverse is a very sweet boiling pot to drop myself further into for sure. That short exists. That short is also on Shudder, is part of the Beyond the Dark anthology series.
Nice.
So my thinking is between Shudder liking Destroy All Neighbors and also already having Malcastraka, I certainly want to pitch them that idea possibly, and I've been developing it kind of on the low down for years now, as you know. But then
Mhm.
beyond that, I have about 6 or 7 other scripts, all horror or horror comedy that I'd like to get out there. I have a really strong idea for a Ghoulies reboot sequel that I
Yeah.
desperately, seriously want to do. That could be a nice jumping point from Destroy All Neighbors because Malakastraka is much bleaker and darker. So as a follow-up, I don't know. I mean, I like subverting expectations, but we shall see. And then beyond that, I'm also re-editing. I'll try to keep this a little short because it's a bit of a crazy story. But in the summer of 2006, I filmed a failed animal rights documentary
Hmm.
for the sister of an Academy Award winning actress who's the daughter of another famous actor. I'll tell you off the record. It was an animal rights documentary in Pennsylvania. I stayed with him all summer filming it, and it ended up becoming my Lost in La Mancha, but with horses because they bankrupted the production by rescuing too many horses and they had nowhere to put them. So we had to make a secret agreement with a progressive Amish man named Enos King to hide the horses in his barn until more paddocks were built on her father's land. I ended up with a rough cut of a feature film shot on mini DV when I was 19 that showed all this fall into chaos. And I've just sat on the footage forever because I was embarrassed by it. I never was paid. There was no licensing, no nothing. And now it's almost 20 years later, and I think it would be fun to revisit that footage and make this edit, even if I can't legally release it. But maybe I will. And I think it'll be a fun way to reclaim this lost bit of my history that is insane. And yes, off the record, I could give you more details.
I love that. That is,
Yeah.
those kinds of documentaries that just go in a completely different direction are always
Mhm.
the best. So
I was embarrassed because I had no money, so I was shooting it on mini DV tape on a
mhm.
mini DV camera, and I got away with filming things other people wouldn't because I looked like a kid, and it was so unprofessional, nobody cared, and that was embarrassing to me. But now all these years later, it is so inherently the year 2006, which is retro and nostalgic, that the fact it's shot on mini DV and is lo-fi could actually be a selling point to make it stand out as a period piece documentary that could get into film festivals now when 20 years ago no one would touch it.
Mm,
We shall see. We shall see. But I'm very excited about that.
absolutely. That sounds
That's gonna be
awesome.
fun.
Charles,
Mm.
I always like to end these by asking, is there a movie you watched recently that you really loved that you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I'll bring up the one and only Gorgo, now out on 4K from Severin.
Nice.
The British Irish ripoff, you'd say, of Godzilla, but it fucking is awesome. The best technicians worked on it. The 4K is gorgeous. It was shot in Technicolor. The reds and the yellows and the greens pop. It's early 60s in London. Honestly, it's one of the best 4Ks I've seen, and Gorgo is so cute. He's got big flappy ears, kind of looks like an upright Baragon from the Godzilla films. And no, what can I say? I'm a big Gorgo head now. Gorgo is number one in my mind at this moment of time.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, we know we can find Destroy All Neighbors on Shudder, but where can people find more about you?
You can find me on Instagram at cpiper, Pieper, like one pie per serving. I'm on Twitter at Inherent Charlie. And if you're curious, you can find a lot of my short films and animations and further info on www.charlespiper.com.
Awesome. And Jonathan, tell people where they could find you and where they could find FilmQuest.
Yeah, you can find me. I mean, since Charlie, he gave all the good details. If you want to find us on Instagram, just go to @FilmQuest. You could also go to the website filmquestfest.com. We are taking submissions right now. We do want genre. We take everything from music video to documentary to shorts and features and animated films. And then also, if you want to see some of my own work, you could go to bohemianindustries.com, or you could go to Instagram, which I don't update that often, but you can go to Instagram, which is @bohemianindustries. So you can check that out.
Awesome.
Woo!
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this. And Charles, Jonathan, hopefully we'll get each of you back on the show again sometime.
I would
Hell
love it.
yeah. Would love it too.
I'm Josh Bell.
And I'm Jason Harris, and we co-host a podcast called Awesome Movie Year.
Each season, we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year.
We deep dive into these specific years, and we pick out why they were such great years for films. We go over the biggest hits, the biggest flops, the best pictures, some personal picks, some cult classics.
Years we've covered in past seasons include 1994, 2003, 1977, and 1984, and we've got all of film history to look forward to. So check us out at awesomemovieyear.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you to Charles Pieper for joining me on that one, also to Jonathan Martin, and thank you to you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, of course, make sure you're subscribed wherever it is that you're listening right now. And if that app happens to have a 5-star button that you can click on to drop us a little 5-star rating and review, it would be very much appreciated. It helps make sure that more people check out the show, and then we can continue doing awesome things with this podcast. So that does it for today's episode. You could also follow us on social media at PiecingPod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And don't forget, we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, from Awesome Movie Year, which is another movie podcast that I produce, and from my music career. So lots of great stuff over there. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be posting some advanced stuff on there from my music, but there's always new things on there from Piecing It Together and Awesome Movie Year. So check it out. I appreciate you being out there just listening, but if you want to support the show in that way, it's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. And speaking of my music, let's close out the show with a piece of my music. And I played the Bus Party to Hell on the main Destroy All Neighbors episode. I gotta play another crazy track. Let's see, what do I got? I want to play something pretty damn heavy, and so I think this would be a good one. I'm gonna go with a track called Burnout from my album Head Like Fire. Hope you enjoy this song. Head Like Fire is, of course, available on all the streaming services, where you can also find my current stuff, which is the 24 for 2024 series, where I'm releasing a song on the first and third Friday of every month of 2024, 24 songs in total. But this goes back to around 2008, I believe, is when Head Like Fire came out. This is Burnout. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.